maybe we'll get started and hope that some others jump on. Okay, well, thank you everybody again for joining tonight. As I mentioned in our email, we're going to do our the main.
You muted.
I just got muted.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened. Our main focus is going to be on continuing our visioning discussion that we had last time. We thought that was a good discussion. I know we got a little bit rushed kind of towards the end, but we want to continue that. And thanks to those of you that sent in some additional ideas, and Grace, who helped us with that facilitation last time, we'll jump into that again. But before we started the agenda, I wanted to give you all a little more information. As I mentioned, I took on a new position within our community planning and development that I'll be moving into in November. So in the meantime, Ella, who unfortunately was sick today and wasn't able to join us, but that all of you know well from our previous meetings, will be stepping in as the interim project manager. So she'll take on that role and continue to work with all of you. Edson and Cortland will also continue to be on our team going forward. That my position is actually posted. So if you know any good planners out there, that's a position that we're advertising for and that we will fill going forward. But in the meantime, in addition to Ella and Edson, we do have our consultant team, and I'll just remind folks of everybody that's on here, and you will probably be seeing a little more of them. They'll help with leading some of our steering committee meetings and helping with engagement and plan, as we plan on the next phase, they'll be taking on more of that role as well. So you may be hearing from them. So if you recall, we have Cheney Bostic, and she's kind of the equivalent of the staff project manager on our consultant side. So she'll be helping, continuing to help with that. And then we also have Grace, who's our facilitator. And then Brad Siegel with Puma is on here as well. And Amanda Kennard, who's also with Puma. So they'll continue to help and support these meetings. We are, I think it was a discussion point last time, and we've been working on getting our website updated. It looks like it's not quite up there, but we're working on getting all their names up there, so you're familiar with who's helping on the team, and you can also share that with other folks. And we're also working on some updates on the website to kind of explain where we are in the process and what's coming next in terms of, we're working on a summary of all of our community engagement and preparing for like the next phase. So we're working on those updates, and we'll touch a little bit on where we are in the process again tonight. But I think that's all on my updates. I don't know if anybody had any questions on that, or if Cheney wanted to pull up the agenda, we can talk a little bit more on what's planned for tonight. Okay, you want me to take this one, Cheney, or are we moving to the next one? This is just explaining, we're kind of breaking up this vision discussion into two pieces. One is continuing our discussion from last time, where if you remember, we did those sticky notes about our priorities, and we'll talk about how we're grouping them and try to come up with kind of an overarching vision statement. And this is just a kind of brainstorming first draft for each of those groupings. And we'll do those in small groups and then come back together. And then we'll spend a little bit of time talking about what we're seeing and going through some of our engagement feedback that we've received from the broader public. And then talk, are we missing some pieces in the vision we've discussed so far? Is there more that we can flesh out about some of those topics based on what we're hearing from engagement? And this is all working towards draft vision statements that we'll vet further, and we'll also share those with the broader public to get their feedback on. But we're hoping to get to a good place where we kind of have a start of that draft at the end of this meeting. So with that, I think I'll hand it over to Grace to talk a little bit more about what we're working on this evening.
Sure. So hello everyone again. So that's just some logistics with Zoom. So if you can turn your video on, just helps us kind of feel like we're somewhat in a room together. Mute when you're not speaking. If you're having any technical issues, you can send a message in the chat to Edson. Thanks, Edson. And members, so we may have some members of the public attending today. The conversation is going to mainly be with the steering committee members, but if any members of the public have questions, they can write those in the chat. And as a reminder, the meeting is being recorded. So kind of here's a little snapshot of where we are in the timeline. And as you can see, we're kind of really at the end there of that first phase. And I think it's an exciting place to be. So because we're going to be kind of moving from where we're doing just research to where we'll be starting to draft some of the content for the plan. So the goal of the 2 activities we're doing today is to produce language that'll be used to draft 6 vision elements for the plan. Cheney's going to go into later into what those vision elements are into more depth. But for now, you can kind of think of them as a way of organizing our ideas for the vision into 6 categories, sort of based on the framework from the city's 2040 comprehensive plan. You can go to the next slide. You guys have seen these ground rules at every meeting, so I kind of won't go over them one by one, but it's just sort of, these rules are in place to just recognize that we have, limited time for everyone to share their input, and we really want to honor that everyone has wisdom to share. And we want to provide equal space for everyone to participate. So I'm going to ask everyone to sort of push yourselves out of your comfort zones today. So if you tend to be someone that is more quiet in the meeting, I'm going to challenge you to speak up. And if you tend to be someone who talks a lot, I want to challenge you to kind of create space for other people and maybe even encourage folks to talk. And as a reminder, to use those kind of Zoom functions to help participate. If you feel like we aren't seeing you, you can use the raise hand or the chat to get our attention. So we're doing 2 small group activities today. And the reason why we're doing that is we kind of really feel like in order to make space for everyone to speak, those small group activities really help with that. And the first one is sort of a continuation of the work we were doing last week. So we'll start off just by kind of looking at and reviewing those clusters that we created from the last meeting. And then we're going to break into small groups to kind of develop statements or names for those clusters that sort of capture the ideas and insights from each cluster. And then we're going to come back to the large group and share the ideas that we came up with and review them together. In next slide. Oh, now we're going to open the clusters. Sorry. Shane, if you could grab that, sorry.
No, you're right. You had one more slide, sorry.
Oh, no, I think I want to do the clusters and then this one, if that's okay.
Okay, okay.
Thank you. So these, you guys might remember, this is kind of the groupings that we came up with from the last meeting. They look a little different because I tried to get them to fit all on one page. And you'll also notice that there's a new comment in blue. That's we gave you guys the opportunity to submit some things online. And so the idea in blue was a new idea that was submitted online. If you weren't able to get around to submitting your idea online, don't worry about that. We're going to create space for that during the second activity that we're doing. But just that new idea was around climate adaptation, and is it to clarify, such as limiting impermeable surfaces to deter flooding, reduce urban heat island. So you can see we have like 11, kind of 10, 11 different categories here. When we break into small groups, each group will have 2 to 3 categories, and you guys will start off by having someone in your group, start with one category and read the ideas in that group. Then you'll kind of just talk about what are the main ideas in that group, what are the key words you're seeing, just kind of getting to know the ideas that are in that group. And then you'll sort of work on naming them. And then now I can go back to that slide. Jeannie, thanks. So I know you might hear the word naming and you might think we just kind of want a category like economic issues, but we really kind of want something more detailed than that. We want kind of a statement from you that captures all the insights and ideas for each cluster. It's helpful if you can kind of keep it active and have it begin for a word for when we're with a verb for when we start drafting those vision statements. You can kind of think of it as answering the question of what is an ideal version of the near Northwest, or you can think of it as completing the statement of an ideal version of the near Northwest will. kind of had an example of what the language could look like from the 2040 plan was embrace innovations in transportation policy and technologies to improve movement through the city. And that might be a column that has a bunch of ideas about different ways like biking or the monorail and different things like that were mentioned, and they maybe came up with that. Another, I think it's helpful to provide examples too. So maybe if you had one of your columns had ideas like more grocery stores with healthy foods, or more parks, more rec centers, more access to healthcare facilities, you might come up with a name for your category that says promotes access to services and amenities that promote health. So that might be kind of the name you come up with for your category. And the language doesn't have to be as kind of formal or policy sounding as what I'm saying. You should really have it be kind of what sounds natural to you guys. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give you guys 25 minutes to break into your small groups. You'll have until 6:40, and then we'll come back and we'll want to volunteer from each group to kind of share the different names that you develop. Does anyone have any questions for me before you go into the small groups? I think Trupti, maybe raise your hand.
Yeah, hi. So, and I don't have the clusters in front of me right now, but when I was looking at them right before this meeting, I noticed there were common things in multiple clusters, right? So are we going to deal with that when we come back with the different names to then regroup again? Because just, again, it might be around housing or mixed income type housing. There's stuff like that I saw in multiple categories because, we were kind of rushing through trying to bucket them last time. So I just didn't know when we were going to deal with that. No,
thanks. And I think so we were thinking about it, and we were thinking we wanted to really, sorry, I'm looking at you, but you're kind of sideways on me, so I look funny.
Sorry.
I am, so we decided we really wanted to keep the momentum going, and we spent a lot of time sorting the clusters last time. And I think what will happen is that we might develop some redundant language because there is maybe something in one category and the other, but that's okay, because when the team takes that back to draft those vision elements, we'll be able to kind of eliminate that redundancy. So I don't think it will hurt us moving forward. It'll kind of help us not get stuck in the sorting zone for too long.
Great, thank you.
Were there any other questions before we kind of moved on to small group work? Awesome. So Amanda, I think, is going to help us, and I'll get into our small groups, and then I'll kind of probably float around.
Welcome. It's great to have everyone in this group. So like we mentioned, I'm going to pop up the kind of examples that we're going to be working on, and then we can start creating that. I know that we have like maybe 25 minutes, so we're trying to do 3 columns. So let me share my screen real quick. Perfect. Can you see that?
Yes.
Perfect. So the very first thing is we're going to work on column 3. And so can someone read out oh. I don't know why this is, there you go. Okay, can someone read out column 3, all the 4, like the ways to get, just kind of, the first thing is we're gonna read them out loud. And so Tripti, Rebecca, would you read them?
Sure. Ways to get more diverse people in the hood, more families with diverse representation, affordable housing and inclusive place, repair historic harms, expanded affordable housing requirements for multifamily.
Okay, with this specific column, is there any keywords that stand out after reading these 4 statements?
Diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Housing.
Inclusive. Affordable.
Affordable.
That's what I was gonna say. Yep.
Families.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And so, like using the guidance kind of that we just kind of talked about, I want to start kind of creating a statement, kind of a using kind of a verb to start it with some of these words that you've already mentioned: diversity, housing, inclusive, affordable, and families, of how we can create some sort of vision statement. Like in 2040, an ideal vision for the near Northwest will. And so just want to throw out if anyone has an idea or how to frame it together.
Well, I'll raise my hand. Should I raise my hand?
Go for it.
Go for it. There's only 4 of us.
So something to the effect that in 2040, near Northwest area will have space or room for people of diverse background and incomes, something along those lines. I mean, this is what we're kind of talking about, is the ability to have folks of all different income levels and backgrounds to be able to live all together amongst one another. So but again, I think somebody else can wordsmith that for sure.
Can we use the word provide? That it will provide. Does that mean?
Yeah, I like that.
And in front of space and between provide, we could say living.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or should we go, we'll provide housing? Or, or is living space a better term than housing?
I don't know. I think housing is I don't know. That's a good question.
And another thing where the provide, something like will accommodate, or, I don't know.
Accommodate is a good alternative to provide for sure.
I guess it's
accommodate.
This is however you guys are feeling it. If someone has some opinion different, we want to hear it all, or we can phrase it differently, but we want to capture the different ones that folks are feeling.
I think accommodate feels like a conditional thing sometimes, or like not a guarantee. Maybe where provide is more of a guarantee.
Yeah, I like that.
I like the idea of accommodate because you're like open for, is that kind of the like where your brain was going? Yeah.
Okay.
How do you feel about it?
Oh, I was going to say, we skipped over the repair historic harms, which I feel like should be included in there somehow, if not directly, like acknowledging that. I think like maybe for current, future, and past residents, like, could that be a way to?
Past, present, and future residents?
Yeah.
Do we want to take the two? Do we want to take the two live together, or do we want to keep that in?
So keep
providing living space.
Say that again, Rebecca.
Because we're saying provide living space, and it just seems like to live together might be redundant.
Yeah.
Yep.
So remove living space.
No, remove to live together.
Now that repairing harm is the interesting one, because that is a little different than the rest of them, in the sense the rest of them are forward looking about how we could, create and have spaces for everyone to be part of the same community and not have these, folks, with a lot of money, separated from folks with little money. But that repair is kind of saying we're going to go do something about past harms. And I'm just wondering whether that belongs in this category or has its own, what that even means. I feel like I'm not even sure, I could even come up with what that really means, just from the standpoint of I haven't experienced that. So for me to think about how to fix something that I don't understand, like I feel like I'm not equipped to even determine how to do that outside of let's not make the same mistakes of the past in the future vision.
Well, and depending on who you are, how long your family's been in the neighborhood, you might have a different sense of of past harms than
Yep.
someone else.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a little bit loaded.
Yeah. And I feel like I did miss last week, but I feel like the last time I was here, we've kind of talked through this idea and we're struggling to really land on something that
Yep.
actually addresses it adequately.
Right.
Because it is such a big, not to overuse the word diverse, but like complex, like to both of your points.
Right.
Hard
to bucket.
Yes.
Hard to bucket into this one versus other ones. I mean, because it spans more than just housing, which is what we're talking about here. You know, it spans opportunities, education, recreation, like all of those things. So to me, it's almost its own category, or one that I think we need to look at as a larger group, you know, and in the context, you know, I just feel like I don't think we could do it in that one bucket.
Like that's sort of the point of the whole, that should be the overarching theme of our entire initiative, almost should be that approach, instead of just trying to plug it into these little.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like I said,
I want to say for like the purpose of this activity, I think you guys can decide like what you feel like is appropriate to do with it. But if there are ideas that, because I know that there were some sticky notes that maybe had multiple ideas on them, maybe it's fine to have multiple, like a couple statements to capture what's on there. But overall, we want to bring all the ideas together. But if there is one that you feel like just can't quite fit, it's fine to develop a second statement to capture that.
Can we put a question mark on that past harms statement? Either after past harms or, yeah.
Or do we try to incorporate into, we will do this, and in doing this, we will, you know, try to repair, issue pass, while we're trying to make it a space for various groups of people to live within a community. You know, I again, like I was going back to what Grace was saying, is how to incorporate that into a second statement along with.
How do we make the past harms piece be an action statement that is doing something as opposed to being, it's aspirational? Yes, we know there are past harms. How do we fix them?
Right.
You guys are doing great. I'm going to jump into another room and just kind of keep conscious of, because you guys have three groups to go, just kind of conscious of moving through them. Sorry.
Yeah, maybe we can come back to this one.
We can circle back to this one.
Yeah, let's circle back. I feel like we got a real tough one in here.
Dang, I thought
that is a really tough one.
I thought we were just doing 3.
So we're gonna do column 4. If
okay,
someone wants to read out these 4 here in the middle.
I'll read them. Safer walkways, bikeways, connect community. 1/4 to 1/3 of streets don't have cars or limited car access. Prioritize people rather than cars. Bike, roll, walk instead of having to use a car. Federal is pedestrian and bike friendly. Oh, I am on board for every single one of these things.
Exactly.
Sign me up.
So what are some common, words that stand out or ideas that stand out?
Safety.
Yeah. Alternative transportation, which I hate even to call it alternative, but I guess that's what it is now. Or maybe one day it won't be.
Less car dependent.
Yeah,
those are some great words.
I think there's a ringer in this a little bit, which is accessible. I think along the ADA lines.
Actually, the accessible as well as connected. I think connected is another one too.
And then if you are going to move away, if this seems to be moving away from the motorized transportation in terms of a car and looking more at these physical ways of moving. And if you can't bike, walk, ride, roll, you do need to be able to, well, I guess roll if you're in a wheelchair, but but having the sidewalks be accessible, having that space be open.
So with all these words, how do we start framing, kind of working with that statement in 2040, an ideal vision for New Northwest well?
Integrate? I don't know.
Do we want to start it again with NNW will?
Yeah, I like the NNW will. I was thinking something like it will ensure.
Oh, that's a
And
good
then
one.
the stuff that we want to happen, you know?
But are we ensuring it, or are we trying to think of the word? I don't know if we can ensure it, but maybe there's a more active word that is something we could actually propose.
I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of this, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think this kind of gets back to like, what are the limits of, you know, near Northwest as a process versus, I would say I want to ensure every single thing we're about to, put down. And I would say we'll ensure living spaces, will ensure access to various transit modalities. But, what does this near Northwest actually do or provide if ensure is not the right word?
Advocate or direct.
Okay.
Could build be one? I mean, a lot of this is infrastructure. So it's the building of certain infrastructure, but also the decrease of other infrastructure. Or not destruction. I don't want to say we're just destroying cars, but like.
I think direct might be the right word, because this policy and guiding document doesn't, get money or do anything. All it does is actually direct and guide in a sense. So I wonder if direct or guide or something like that, to Rebecca's point of using that right verb for what this planning document can do versus what it can't do. So what do you think, Rebecca? Do you think direct is the right word, maybe the right the verb for all of these things, because that's what this guiding document will do?
Advocate for.
Okay.
I'm just wondering. I mean,
I'm fine with that.
And we can play around with the themes and the words that you mentioned, whether that's near Northwest will advocate for connected, accessible streets that promote non-motorized travel, or however you want to phrase that.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Put that down. I'm in agreement.
I just still worry about people for whom a walk, a bike, a scooter, or whatever is not feasible.
So, I mean, for them, what is it? Public transit?
Well, I mean if they, maybe you need to have access to cars. Maybe
right. Yeah. Like, so I think the right terms have to be in addition to cars, is to, so I don't think we're getting rid of cars. I think the issue is with things like climate and all these other things, it's about how to prioritize cars less, because we just have not prioritized the other modalities for the last, 100 years.
And if you think about, if we're able to, I mean, this might sound terrible, but maybe walk through it with me. Like, if you're able to provide all the needs that someone has in one community, so we have a grocery store, we have those necessities within one place. If you do, for example, I'm thinking, what if you shut down 32nd to traffic and you shut down like 2 entryways onto 32nd, then the entire street's open. So is the street accessible for people to, move through, either in whatever their mode of transportation might be? There's just, other ways to like go about that. But I do agree, like you do have to have cars for accessibility, and you have to have public, like Access-a-Ride needs to be able to access certain things, which I think in some ways Access-a-Ride is hindered by cars parking in front of people's houses, or like, you know, blocking roads or things like that. But that's not, I don't know.
So I'm trying to hear what you're saying and write it down.
Yeah.
Kind of like, you know.
You don't have to capture everything I'm saying.
No, but it's great. You know, like we'll advocate for connected, accessible streets at key locations for all modes of travel or something like that. But we can do several statements, not just trying to capture all this, but we can do two.
That's true. So yeah, that could be one. And then like, I mean, a lot of this is about bike, right? So like increase biking. I like advocate still, or increase, bike accessibility and pedestrian friendly I don't want to say infrastructure because that could be anything, but like pedestrian friendly I don't know.
Can I open a can of worms?
Of course.
I think on major streets like 32nd, like Zuni, maybe Tejon, we need traffic calming, because a lot of the danger, if you're trying to be alternative, is people driving really, really fast and getting annoyed when they find people who are traveling sustainable.
Yep.
So Edson, in this exercise though, and I'm gonna repeat maybe what we probably were told previous meetings about, you know, there is the visioning of what we want, and then there's the how to achieve that. And right now we're not on the how to, and I think Rebecca, the issue of like traffic calming on those is the how to achieve pedestrian safety, right? So am I correct? I mean, because we can't talk about the, you know, how to's is part of the what we want to achieve.
And you captured that with safety, right?
Yep.
You mentioned that earlier.
I hope so, yeah.
And so
I agree, Rebecca.
We could incorporate that word safe. You know, I kind of
I think we need to put safe in there somewhere for safe and connected streets, accessible to all modes of transportation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like that key locations though.
We could do that.
Right, because we're not talking about making every single street in this, whatever, how big it is, area inaccessible to cars, right? It's about like key interfaces or like areas. We're
not saying that cars need to go away from any of these places. It's more about cars are there, but if sidewalks are missing, we've now made it not safe. And in terms of connectivity, I think walking connectivity must really exist everywhere, right? I can't even imagine if we don't have sidewalks that connect, you know, to all the places that we need to go or want to go, then, you know, I think we're at a loss there. Yeah. So, I mean, so back to, but the key locations, I think comes back a little bit to kind of the how,
yeah,
you know,
that's true.
Kind of like, you know, whereas what we want is the ability for folks to safely get around in whatever mode of transportation they choose.
Yeah. So
for instance, you know, like in Sunnyside specifically, you know, and I walk past this and every day I say, something's got to be done here. So Pecos, right? Pecos is kind of a arterial, right? It takes you to 70, you know, if I'm saying it wrong, it's a connector. I don't know, because I don't know my names of the types of streets, but it's a major road and it's only going to get more traffic, right? There are a lot of intersections where if you're crossing Pecos, just within Sunnyside, and I'm trying to go from my house to places of business that I visit and I go on foot, there are no, you know, you got to wait a while to, you know, safely cross Pecos because it's a heavy car, you know, right now there aren't lights or there aren't, you know, any stops or anything. So Pecos to me, like, and I'm just, again, sticking to where I am, but for me to get from where I am to under half a mile to a business and I have to cross Pecos, that is not a safe intersection if I had a stroller and a dog, you know?
Just quickly too, I know we're running out of time, so I want to get the third one and then kind of circle back on this, but the third one only has 2.
Yep.
If Trupti, if you want to read just
Sure.
that. Yeah.
So, bunch of new housing types, forms, and sizes, shared ownership, different models. So mixed housing.
I think what all this sounds to me is, and I know this is a trigger word for a lot of people in Highlands and Sunnyside, is upzoning, right? Like multi-unit dwellings. Yeah. Shared ownership is so interesting.
Well, so that one is thinking about something other than just a, you know, single a homeowner. This is like having community land trusts as opportunities for having housing. Yeah, cooperative.
Multi-generational housing.
Yep, exactly. Cooperatives, multi-generations. But this is really a shared ownership, which is very different, you know? But anyway, yeah, so land trust is kind of what I had in mind of, we don't have anything like that. And that, you know, allows rents to stay low and people to, you know, own the land, own the thing without actually owning the land in a sense. So they own their home, they don't own the land, so that it continues to stay affordable. So to me, it plays more into the affordability more than anything else, the having that different models of ownership. But I think the rest of it speaks to that mixed housing. Ooh.
We got about a minute.
What if we will innovate on housing like types, and because a lot of these things we're thinking about are innovative, right? It's moving away from the single family homeowner. It's moving that land ownership, that equity more collective.
Yep. On
different types of housing. I don't know, now I'm stuck.
Well, how about will
go on.
The housing that is inclusive and diverse, including old models of housing and new innovative models.
So that addresses the past, present.
We're going to break us up now.
Sorry to rush my group.
Hello, everyone. So now that we're back with the big group, we'll take 15 minutes to review the ideas that we came up with. Janie, do you want me to share my screen, or do you want to open up the shared?
Yep, I got it.
Okay, great. So maybe I could get someone to volunteer from each group. So this was, I think, group 1 with Janie, right?
Yep.
Maybe someone from your group could share the language that you developed for each of your categories.
Great. I think I'll jump in with at least the first third of it, as we all decided to break it up a little bit. So this very first one, we even had a hard time categorizing it last month. Sustainability, what does it mean? Economic, social, and environmental. So kind of the way that we looked at this one was that in 2040, an ideal version of the near Northwest will have been using the lens of sustainability to make a range of equitable decisions around all aspects of planning. So, again, this is a really big picture thing, which is why we said, and we don't want to wait till the year 2040 to be making sustainable decisions for obvious reasons. So that's why we use the past tense we have been using. And then also, it's not specifically focused on, you know, the environmental. Obviously, it's also the social and the economic. With that, I'll pass it to the next one in our group to do the other ones, but that's where we landed.
Thanks.
Thanks,
I
Nola.
can do
You
the
have
next.
Yeah. So this one was more focused on cleaner air, trees, open space, and less pollution, more permeable surfaces. So so I can just read what we kind of finalized. Be designed to live in harmony with nature and improve the environmental conditions to provide more green space and trees. And we tried to get some of the why it's important to have greenness and also making sure that some concrete things were in there, like more open green space and more trees. And I think Renee brought up a really good point that that paying attention to when trees might be dying off in a neighborhood, if a lot of them were planted at one time. So always just ensuring that we're improving the environmental conditions and adding more trees and open space, green space.
Thanks. Does someone else want to share the last idea for your group?
Yeah, I'll talk about housing. So the comments had been about mixed income housing, different housing sizes, finding locations to activate on the edges of the study area. So we would imagine that in 2024, the Near Northwest would have leveraged policy, resources, investments, and tools to expand, find new locations, and embrace a range of new housing types, housing sizes, and price points, creating housing for all. So there's just a focus on the things that we would need to have this diversity of housing for a diversity of different people, and that the need to embrace those, not resist that change or something that's new would be important. And that could be a barrier, along with, because sometimes it's finding locations and having policy are some of the biggest barriers to housing.
Thank you for sharing. We'll move to the next group. So Edson, I think you led this group. Did somebody from the second group want to start and share? You could either share all the ideas, or you could kind of take turns like the first group, sharing the names you developed for your columns.
Yeah, would anyone, one of the three, want to start?
Sure, this is Tripti. I'll go with the first one. Diversity, housing, inclusive, affordable. This one is less of a repeat than the last one, but we came up with this will provide living space for people of diverse backgrounds and income for past, present, and future residents. We were a little hung up on one of the items that we had under there regarding past harms. So it says repair historic harms. We were hung up on where exactly and how exactly do we do that, and whether that belongs maybe in its own category, or we're not sure. That one we had difficulty with. But other than that, we were thinking about how to have room and space for all diverse and income and culture, all of that, all the diversity, but have room for all of that within our neighborhoods and not be living, separately, broken up by cost of housing.
Thank you. Did you guys want to split it up by members, or
sure,
or did else want to share the second idea in your group?
I will.
Rebecca, thanks.
So we've got, this is really all accessible transportation, safety alternative transportation, less car dependent, accessible as in ADA, connected, non-motorized ways to travel, sidewalks. And then the statement is Near Northwest Side will advocate for safe and connected accessible streets at key locations for all modes of travel.
And did you have a second statement kind of with
yes,
that same column?
Sorry, it slipped down. Near Northwest will increase bike accessibility and pedestrian-friendly safe streets and sidewalks. And then we didn't get to finish that one because we needed to move on. So we're a work in progress.
No, thank you. You're definitely all giving us stuff to work with because we use these to draft the vision elements, and you guys are language to use, so thank you. So for the last, what was number 5 cluster, did somebody want to share what you came up with that?
Yep, I can do it. It was about sort of similar to what the last group addressed with housing, of mixed housing, providing like new sizes and types of ownership of land and of property. So Near Northwest will innovate housing that is inclusive and diverse. And again, we were real rushed on the end. We processed a lot in the beginning. Also provide housing for all types of people. So thinking, well, a lot of what we talked about were like mostly captured in the first statement of kind of shared ownership, land grant style, moving away from kind of that single family occupancy type of ownership of land and property.
Oh, thanks. And just for time, we'll kind of keep moving and move on to the third group. That was Liz's group. Maybe I like this. So I like how we're getting to see everybody's faces. So if you guys want to keep this theme rolling and kind of have different members of your group each share, I like that we're kind of getting to hear from you.
Yeah, and you can probably see which we spent a lot of time on that for the last column first. But if Tim or Lorenzo or Councilwoman wanted to jump in, feel free.
I guess I can jump in. We didn't we didn't come to a conclusion that narrowed it down to a single sentence. So I think maybe I think this one just is going to need a lot more work to get us down to something that tries to cover all these things. I think what we really found was transportation is a huge deal in the neighborhood, and it's going to take a lot of attention.
Yeah, and I think some of the ideas in this group, we were trying to get to a little more like detail of what it means to have like frequent and reliable transit, and so that's some of the details that you see there.
Okay. And so was there, for the first 2 categories then, so you guys were, those were the names you developed for the first 2, so you guys were talking about the third, your third column first, and then did somebody else from your group want to speak to either of the other 2? And thanks for speaking to that.
I would, but I can barely read this. It's so small. We had talked about, in regards to transportation, that's where we focused, obviously. And the transit has to be frequent and reliable and accessible along the main corridors. And there was a lot of discussion about the corridors, where they are. And that it'd be convenient to the destinations like downtown learning institutions and major transit connections, such as Union Station. That's the main one, would be a good route for that. A variety of transit options, such as neighborhood circulators and community serving nodes connecting to Quick Newton as a part of our community as well.
And so
also, we're very concerned. Actually, it was my concern, being a longtime resident, that the transportation, whatever mode it is, that it be environmentally friendly. We can go electric or solar or whatever that is non-fossil fuel would be a plus.
Thanks. I want to make sure we get to see the first 2 ideas that your group had shared too, and I'm sorry that it's difficult to read. We want to make sure that everyone can see everything clearly.
Sure.
Did someone else in your group who maybe want to speak to the first? Maybe one person could just speak to the first 2 ideas, just so we can maybe just have a couple minutes before we want to give you all a break. if someone wants to share those first two ideas.
So we ran out of time on the first one because we started backwards. We went with the one that had more.
Oh, okay.
So we spent a lot of time on the very right-hand column and 1 minute, 60 seconds on the left-hand column. So the theme, I know we're not supposed to talk about things, but it was businesses. And so we just wanted to say that like in our future would have commercial nodes that still support community-oriented and diverse business retail. Because a lot of times I put in the chat, I put a chat to the link to Denver streetcar legacy. And so in Northwest Denver, in some of our original neighborhoods, we have the leftover of streetcar nodes. Jefferson Park has them, Highland has them, Sunnyside has a few of them. And so we want to make sure that we're honoring those commercial retail serving nodes that are surrounded by single family or 2-unit housing. So it's pretty unique. It wasn't everywhere in Denver. It was in Denver's original neighborhoods.
And could you define commercial nodes for me? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the term.
So commercial nodes are things like 32nd and Zenai. So it's where you have commercial corners surrounded by residential housing stock. It's a very common term.
So I would just jump in and say the commercial nodes are where the stops were on the streetcars. And so they happen periodically, but they don't happen as a strip like you see in commercial strips today. And that's what sets a lot of Northwest Denver apart from other parts of the city.
Oh, that's interesting. And yeah,
can I ask you guys a question? Were you all looking for diversity in the ownership as well of the local businesses?
Yes.
We say diverse businesses and retail.
Okay, because the business can offer a diversity of, you know, foods and goods or whatever, but the ownership may be important to add in there as well.
For sure, I think we
they may not all be owned by diverse backgrounds, for example, but they're offering a diversity of flavors, if you will, that people want.
That's a very good suggestion. I think that probably came up in some of our ideas flowing into this, so being clear about that going forward, I think is very helpful. Thank you, Councilwoman.
So we still have one more group to get to, so I want to make sure you get your break because I know it's a long meeting. And so did we speak to your middle idea?
We didn't entirely. Let me hit it really quickly by simply reading it. In 2040, our neighborhood will have had preservation and enhancements to the history of our neighborhoods that encourage keeping old buildings, facilitate and incentivize adaptive reuse, and ensure compatible design with new urbanism. New urbanism really being old urbanism. For those who aren't familiar with that.
Sorry, and I just want to, I know if I don't understand, maybe someone else in the room doesn't understand. Would you all be able to define adaptive reuse and compatible design and new urbanism?
Adaptive
not in the next 5 minutes, no.
But adaptive reuse is basically using the built structures and being able to adaptively reuse them for future uses instead of tearing them down. So it's not tearing things down, it's taking something and adaptively reusing it into so taking a restaurant into a barbershop, and encourages new urbanism. I'll put a link in the chat for new urbanism and then for the streetcar nodes, and you can update as you move forward.
No, thank you for doing that. And then I want to get to the last group here.
Hey, Grace, in our group, Lexi is the spokesperson, and then we have seasoning and spice provided by Nita Ashton and Councilwoman Ortega.
Great.
Right. Yeah, so for number 9, it was kind of about amenities, which I think kind of ties a little bit with one of the ones from the previous group with kind of businesses, but we're talking a little bit more of like the whole live here, work here, play here. So preserve and create neighborhood amenities that benefit all income levels, jobs, affordable housing, essential services, and resources. So those kind of probably overlaps with a few others, but really trying to create that kind of complete neighborhood, and we can get to some services that we need without getting in a car, hopefully, and that type of stuff. So that was number 9. And then number 10 was a little bit of things that kind of were not all lining up as far as, a single statement, but kind of our idea that we came up with was supporting and celebrating the cultural heritage and diversity of the neighborhoods, welcoming of all peoples through accessing city resources and mobilizing volunteers. And that was kind of tied specifically to kind of trying to support and continue existing community building events, and maybe creating new events that can help tie our neighbors and neighborhoods together. So, and equity kind of was tying a theme throughout, but talking about some of these community centers and that might, be subpar to some others in the different parts of the city.
Thank you all so much for taking the time to kind of distill all this input that we had and helping us kind of come up with language that we can use for the vision elements. How are folks feeling? We're a little behind schedule, but are folks feeling like you need a break? Should we take 5?
Yeah, I say take 5, yeah.
Okay, so we'll take 5 minutes. What time do we have now? That can come back at 7:05? Great.
Hey, Amanda, can you take the screen back from me, please? Thank you.
Brad, how are you?
Hey, Rebecca, good. Looking forward to seeing you on Halloween.
Yep. Turns out the parade starts at 9:30. So if we get there at 9:30 to set up, we'll have plenty of time before they actually march down in our direction.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, for the sake of everyone's time and trying to get out of here on time tonight, we'll go ahead and start the second round of tonight's meeting and exercise. I'm gonna start sharing my screen and go back into the presentation for a second. Okay, so last week we started to present some of the themes that we've heard through the online and in-person engagement that we've conducted in phase one. Liz kind of showed some examples of plan pages and some of those vision statements and how they are incorporated into the final plan. And so tonight, as we finalize this visioning stage with you all, we want to start to think about and group these ideas into the 6 vision elements of the comprehensive plan. So Comp Plan 2040 set about a framework that has 6 vision elements. They are listed on the screen. And basically it says that every neighborhood plan that is adopted needs to follow those vision elements. So in other words, we can't, pick 5 and say we don't want one of them. We have to follow all of them. And we're on track. A lot of your ideas have touched on many of these themes. As you can start to read, some of the key descriptors are below each of the 6 elements, but they are equitable, affordable, and inclusive, strong and authentic neighborhoods, connected, safe, and accessible places, economically diverse and vibrant, environmentally resilient, and healthy and active. And so these are just a list of some of the key descriptors that came out of Blueprint. And so our job is to customize our vision statements for each of these elements to near Northwest. That's why Grace has been mentioning, we want to, what makes our neighborhoods unique? What makes, these ideas so special to near Northwest? So we will take those and customize them. And then just to kind of keep you focused on the end result, which is a plan, all of these elements will be woven into 4 main chapters of the plan. So strong and authentic neighborhoods kind of nestles into land use and built form chapter. Equitable, affordable, and inclusive, and economically diverse and vibrant go into economy and housing. Connected, safe, and accessible is mobility. And then environmentally resilient and healthy and active fall into quality of life. So the plan vision sets an overall goal for the plan. So this is something that we always come back to. We are finishing phase 1 of kind of understanding the area. Then we establish a vision. And then any decisions that we make and plan recommendations should always come back to the vision and meet the vision. So it gives us a filter for all of our future ideas. So as I said, it must be consistent with comp plan. It must be based on community input, which I'll go through in just a couple slides here, what we've heard so far, and we will continually update as needed. And then ideally, we would have 1 concise vision statement per element. And that's why we are working with you to get some of that language to go into those draft statements. The community input themes. So last week we gave you, we kind of had a word cloud and some general ideas. We have since taken all of the feedback that we've gotten from the online surveys, in-person surveys, in-person events and things, and we've got this giant spreadsheet and that we filter and can search words and do all kinds of cool stuff with. And so these are some of the themes that we're hearing from the community. So
When we asked which of the following goals from Blueprint Denver do you think are most important to achieve in Near Northwest in 2040, the number one most popular vote was develop safe, high quality options for getting around that promote walking, rolling, biking, and transit and connect people of all ages and abilities to their daily needs. The second was serve all residents with a wide range of affordable housing options and good jobs. The third was direct growth to walkable areas with a mix of housing, jobs, and businesses and more access to transit. And because 4 was really close, maintain connections to the outdoors, respond to climate change, and protect our environment and natural resources. There are obviously other ones, and it's not that they're not significant, but those were kind of the ones that rose to the top in terms of priorities from Blueprint that you all and your community stated. Then another question was, what topics interest you the most? And you could choose up to 3. Number 1 was trees, parks, green space, and recreation, followed by getting around by walking, rolling, bike, or car. There was kind of a tie for 3, which was building design, what future development should look like, building heights, and things like that. And then healthy grocery stores and fresh food nearby and community gardens. So you can start to see what people are most interested in. And then 4th was affordable housing. And that was out of 588 total comments. So then we asked, there were 3 main exercises that were based on a mapping exercise, and we wanted you to identify your likes and strengths, dislikes, and then ideas. So these are the top likes. They kind of fell under the economic development category for the first one. You know, some key words that were talked about were local businesses, quaint neighborhood nodes, restaurants, and a mix of uses. Open spaces and environments, things like great parks, although one needs a name, we've got to do that in this plan. Old trees, views of downtown, river access, and close to Rocky Mountain Lake Park. Those were kind of themes that were mentioned over and over again multiple times. And then the third was mobility. So people talked a lot about liking the walkability of the neighborhoods, being able to walk to parks and businesses, access to transit, access to downtown and the interstates. The I-25 pedestrian bridge is a big like, and bike lanes. So 35th was mentioned quite a lot. Under dislikes and concerns, mobility was a like and a dislike. So under mobility dislikes, most people talked a lot about the bigger arterials. So Federal Boulevard, 38th and Spear were difficult to cross, lack of safe sidewalks along them. The railroads and the highways are a barrier. Lack of sidewalks in Chaffee Park was a big one. Bike safety on Tejon, Zuni Street was mentioned quite a bit. Parking lots and lack of safe protected bike lanes. Under land use and zoning, people talked about apartments and townhomes being too big, scraping of historic homes, single unit zoning preventing additional density, highway barriers and walls, like the aesthetics of them, unkempt properties, lack of streetscape and design on major streets and displacement of residents. And then health and safety, there was a lot of mention of property crime, theft, noise and air pollution from the highways, lack of lighting in underpasses that makes it feel unsafe, drug activity and trash in parks and alleys, and graffiti. And then ideas. So mobility got first again. So there were lots of ideas around mobility, such as bus only lanes or rail lanes, especially on Federal and 38th. Pedestrian bridges over those barriers like the interstates and the railroads. Spear, 29th Federal and Viking Park, that triangle there was lots of comments around solving that. Protected bike lanes, wider sidewalks on those key arterials, electric bus or trolley, bringing back some form of the streetcar,
And then car-free streets, thinking about how new street design could be focused on car-free environments. Land use and zoning was second. So there was lots of ideas around I-25 and Spear Cloverleaf and kind of repurposing or reusing that in a better way. More ADUs, looking at bringing in more bodegas for fresh food, high density near transit, high quality design, more retail near transit, maintaining character and helping people stay in the neighborhood and fix up their homes. And then open space and green infrastructure was third. And that was some ideas were connecting the Greenway from Platte River to 41st and Fox, renovating existing parks, lots of mentions about a dog park being needed, more trees, capping I-25 and I-70, again, with the mobility, making that link, but also bringing in more open space with lack of public land, community gardens, updated rec centers, and public restrooms. So those were the big ideas that came out of the public comments, and we will have these slides in our small groups that we can come back to if you want to review those. But basically, between all of the feedback that we've gotten from you and reading and sifting through all of the public comments thus far, we feel like we have good direction to develop these vision statements on the first three mentioned here. I just kind of highlighted in red some of the elements that maybe lacked comments either way. But what this next exercise is going to focus on, we really need help in diversifying the language and really getting into the meat of a vision statement for economically diverse and vibrant, environmentally resilient, and healthy and active. And so this next exercise, we're going to go into small groups. Grace will introduce the exercise again, and we want to focus on those last three columns. And this is also an opportunity for you to talk about those other vision ideas. Since we asked you for your top three, we know you probably had a lot more on your list. And so this is an opportunity for you to do that. So Grace, with that, you want to introduce the exercise?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, and Cheney kind of spoke to most of this already. And I also wanted to take a moment to just thank the folks who reached out to us and let us know that we needed to provide more space for important ideas that we didn't get to at the last meeting. And so I just want to kind of encourage you guys to keep, communicating with us and letting us know how we can do better. So as Cheney said, we're just going to break up into small groups and kind of focus on answering a couple of questions. First, we're gonna ask you to share any of the vision ideas that we weren't able to discuss in the last meeting. And then we're going to kind of ask you to reflect on all the kind of engagement data that Cheney just shared, and you can reference the PowerPoint during your small group work, so that you can kind of reflect on that and remember it. But not just, and so reflect on that engagement data, but also reflect on kind of what you know of your communities and your experience and what you know of your neighbors, to help us sort of flesh out what you guys feel are kind of the needs and the values of your neighborhoods, to help us kind of flesh out those three vision elements, the economically diverse and vibrant, environmentally resilient, and healthy and active. So we'll do that until 7:45, and then we'll come back to the group to kind of briefly share your ideas. So before we break out, just as you kind of start to wrap up, maybe pick someone from your group and who can kind of do a brief kind of summary highlights of what you discussed when we return.
Wait, before we break out, I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so those surveyed, were any Spanish speaking surveyed?
Is that,
we know,
for the public input?
Yep.
I don't know, Liz or Cheney, do you guys want to speak to that?
We did have some.
Oh,
we did have some that I translated in Spanish, that when we had the maps out, they spoke specifically to their likes, dislikes, and big ideas. A lot of them were focused around the back to school nights specifically. So okay. I did talk to several families just on all Spanish, like the CSE early college was probably 90% Spanish when I talked to them. And so I got a lot of their ideas, as well as North.
Okay. Just wanted to know, I just find it strange that the housing and affordable housing is.
And no, and as you guys move into this next activity, we really want you to help, you know, us not just think about the input that we were together, but maybe also maybe those groups that maybe weren't captured in this public comment. So if you guys, when you're thinking about fleshing out these vision elements, we really want you to think about maybe who's not represented as well and what they may want for the future of the community.
I agree with
and one
thing point on the housing as well.
Yeah, and one thing to point out on sometimes those comments can seem a little skewed. If you remember, we had maps at a lot of the events or on the online survey, and people tend to make a broad comment about housing. So they'll make it in their general statement, but they won't necessarily drop a lot of pins around that. So sometimes it skews it a little bit that there's a lot of mobility comments because people tend to tell us about each intersection where they see a problem or that type of thing tends to come up, and then they'll make one general comment about housing. So take that with a grain of salt in terms of the number of comments, but you are bringing up a good point. And I think we know, and part of the idea of bringing on a navigator partner is to help us reach those folks that are not necessarily haven't participated yet or haven't got into that depth of conversation with us. So I think we know that this is kind of our attempt to work with what we have so far, but we can continue to evolve this and making sure that we get that input. So that's, and we'll give you more than what we're giving you just tonight. We wanted to highlight that we saw as we're starting to go through it that maybe we were not touching as much on some of these themes. So we wanted to give that space to have some of that conversation, but these will evolve and we need to make sure we're making those connections and getting that broader range of folks involved in this process.
Thanks. Were there any other questions before we split out to groups? Is there anything in the chat? Trupti had asked, besides the top 3 breakout, do you have that for the rest of the categories? That might have been while Cheney was presenting. Was that?
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, Trupti, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so you know how for the top 3 things, we had kind of the comments inside of them. Some of them were very close, like the top 3, the third was 12, but there was 11 right under there. So in the same way, do you guys have those kinds of things that like those, the keywords for each of those sections, not just the top 3, because I'd like to see what all of those look like as well.
Yeah, we're working towards putting together a summary that kind of goes by topic. So here's, and yeah, that gets more into the details for each of those.
Sure, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so we'll move into the small groups and then we'll try and come back here at 7:45 to kind of just everyone kind of give us a summary of what they were discussing in the small groups.
Hello, we're back. Esteban's with us this time. So now I'm going to share my screen again. Great. So can you see that there? I kind of did dual screens, but if it's too much, I can just keep one, which is the main focus one, which is when we're kind of more importantly, what we want to write down here is just what ideas for the vision of the near Northwest were missed from the last meeting that have to do specifically with each of these topics. And there's no right or wrong answer. We just want to start capturing. And so we can start off with the first one, which is economically diverse and vibrant. And I can pull up kind of the slides that we've been using as examples and kind of cater it specifically to this section. And so I know that we had some ideas here on like food economy and opportunities that can play into like healthy and active, but and so like the arts and the cultures that are specific to this area, like Chicano culture or Italian culture, things of that nature that we want to start focusing in the economically diverse and vibrant area that is focused to just this area when it has to do with business, education, culture, and artistic opportunities. And so I just want to open up and just kind of popcorn if anyone has any ideas or comments, any needs or aspirations for this for this area that either that you know of, or just like talking to your neighbors, that your neighbors might be something that they're concerned or want to maintain or anything along those? Go ahead, Tripti.
Yeah, so especially around the arts and culture, you know, something that we don't have and we may have spaces for, especially in Sunnyside, is a maker space. You know, we have a lot of warehouses and things that are turning over. You know, we have, you know, we just have like Dawn Foods is moving. You know, there's a lot of space where development can happen. But, you know, what about putting in a maker type space? And that kind of ties into the arts and culture. So this becomes a venue where, you know, artists and artisans, as well as shops and, you know, local things can occur. So, you know, I don't know that within our 4 neighborhoods, do we have something like that? You know, I know Navajo had kind of the art and a couple of theaters, like Bug Theater is still there. You know, are we losing some of that? And do we have a makerspace within near Northwest at all currently? And if not, something like that could be, and it ties into like youth, it ties into education, it ties into, you know, arts and culture and, you know, opportunities, maybe not safety as much, but a makerspace would be something to develop this type of vibrant, you know, community.
Perfect. Thank you. Rebecca, you had your hand up?
Yes. That kind of a creative maker space could also be a space where people could go to learn more about the past of the neighborhood, the cultures of the neighborhood. It wouldn't have to be trying to find 2 different spaces to do that. They'd link together really well.
Agree. It becomes a gathering space for community, education, and it could be in any form. You know, it could also be trade, like, you know, arts and skills and trades and, you know, learning the knit to sew, you know, but also having lectures, you know, or, you know, historians come and do things like that. So a space for that, and we don't have one.
And I've already got a ready-made traveling exhibit, at least for Highland, that we could put in there.
Perfect.
Great. What about for like, oh, go ahead, Esteban.
I was just going to say the Corky Gonzalez is kind of a good model for that because there's a makerspace in there, as well as a kind of a cultural resource center that provides kind of a historical perspective of the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about the library, right?
Yeah, the library.
Yeah, that's a great, love that building.
Yeah, so I mean, like spaces like that in Sunnyside or in the near Northwest, more spaces like that again highlight the history, as well as again provide opportunities to learn new skills or to make things, creative arts, so on and so forth.
Yeah. So that, you know, and I think that planning for youth, and I don't know what's meant there specifically, but the way I'm looking at it is we need spaces for our young adults to go and, you know, and to learn and to hang out, right? Instead of being on the street, not having places to go. But I mean, a place for youth to congregate, you know, I don't know if we have that, but, you know, I guess I think of it as like myself, you know, hanging out in front of 7-Eleven because there was nothing better to do, you know, waiting for your friends. I mean, have we created space for teenagers?
That's good.
Yeah, that kind of also reminds me of spaces like Denver Open Media in the Santa Fe Arts District on 7th and near 7th and Calumet. Again, students, kids, people of all ages can learn how to do digital photography, filmmaking, use specific software. So yeah, I mean, like, you know, again, going back to the library, you could have a space or multiple spaces that offer those types of, you know, opportunities to learn new skills, right? So, but yeah, it has to be kind of a mixed use kind of artistic space.
You know, there's also like the rec centers, and ours are kind of small, but you know, I remember going to maybe the Montclair one when I lived over there, but there was place for kids to, like, you know, play pool and, you know, hang out after school, because they all have, I think youth can get passes, you know, it might even be free, but places where they can go and hang out and, you know, do things like play pool, you know, or whatever it is. So I don't see many places for kids, and I think that's a challenge, and you know, it might lead into the other, you know, issues of whether it's, you know, trouble, you know, or drugs, or, you know, things, you know, they keeping them busier rather than idle, I guess. But places for them, meant for them to, you know, learn and grow.
All
so
right,
I think doing it in rec centers could be part of it too. Yeah.
Rebecca, you're next, and then we want to move on to the next topic,
Yeah.
which would be environmentally resilient.
I was just going to say at the beginning of the 20th century, there was the Northside Neighborhood House that did many of the things that we were asking for. And it reached out to the immigrants at that time, who were the Italians, and everything from teaching English to cooking classes to, you know, all of that. Yeah. So we have a model. We could what's the term? Build back better.
Yeah.
So environmentally resilient, we're trying to move to.
Yeah, and then, you know, I included the examples here that you see that we normally get from our comprehensive plan 2040, but we want to tailor it specifically to the near Northwest. So what are we missing? What do we want to hear? And so I just put that as an example, kind of zoomed in so that you can see as well. But things that are important for near Northwest specifically.
I'd love to see a food forest kind of model somewhere, and, you know, either in an underutilized park, a park that, to me, I'm thinking of the park on Pecos and 46. You know, I'm not sure it has a name. It looks like it's part of the school, but it's really a city park. But food forests and growing, you know, I think in the next couple of decades, I think we're going to have lots of issues with food coming from faraway places versus local. But, you know, even putting together kind of a preserve, but I'm calling it a food forest because I really think it's kind of important to be growing food. But could we use any of our open spaces to create this? And it also can be a place for people to gather, for people to learn about these systems, you know? So food forest, that would be my pipe dream.
You can do that at schools too. We have a lot of schools in our neighborhood, not to take away the ball fields or the areas of play, but there's a lot of, my friend does this in New York City. There's a lot of underutilized spaces at schools that are just not utilized for play or for students. They're just like decorative, and they could all be food, and you can use it as education too. Yeah, but I don't think North does, and North has for sure North has the space for it. I don't know about, I get really confused of where the boundaries are. I think of a lot of things west of Federal sometimes when I'm thinking about this, but like, yeah, there's definitely the school right here.
Sandoval? No,
I'm in Chafee Park, Beach Court. They have multiple playgrounds, and they have a flower farm, but they could have other things.
So, you know, green infrastructure, right? Rooftop gardens. I mean, more green infrastructure in the things that are being built today. So we've got apartment buildings going up all over, especially in East Sunnyside. You know, how could we make them more green, or, you know, more permeable?
Implementing the regulation that whatever the city passed a couple of years ago, that every building over a certain square footage must have a green roof. But I don't know if that's actually being done. I think there's a lot of loopholes and ways of getting around it. So like, could we put an ordinance into this that says that that's actually implemented?
I'm going to pop out, but I just wanted to remind you guys, you're doing great. Just to have somebody be ready to report, give like a brief report out when we come back to the groups.
Yeah. Esteban?
Or was that? Well, I was thinking like, so in terms of environmentally resilient, I mean, so I know that earlier somebody mentioned super blocks, Is that, would that be something that would fit in this area, in this section?
I think maybe under growing responsibly, like
Yeah.
being conscious of how development is shaping and making sure that all development, it's like they mentioned Barcelona super blocks, where it's like a lot of the blocks have everything that you possibly need, and you don't have to like travel and use your car so much. You have it in your own block.
Right.
And so
I think I think it's more of a transportation thing, you know, primarily though, I thought, where it, you know, prioritizes people over cars.
Super blocks cut the intersection at the things to make it, so my husband has a tattoo of a super block to like make it so that cars slow down, there's more space for people, movement of like smaller types of traffic, I think, but I think it's a combination of all of those things.
Yeah, it's a combination of, I mean, it reduces emissions, you know, that's, you know, climate change, you know, more walkability, more infrastructure, right? So like growing responsibly. So I just wasn't sure where it fit, and if that would be something worth discussing when we talk about environmentally resilient neighborhoods.
Totally. I think too, at least up in Chafee Park, our streets are a lot wider because we don't have the, I don't know what it's called, the strip between the sidewalk and the
right of way
curb. Yeah.
Double strip.
The hell strip.
Yep. Yeah. And so we don't even have full sidewalks. So that makes this area, and it is less tree populated, and it makes it look way less like that because all the trees are on individual people's property. And I know that people are responsible, the owner of the home is responsible to maintain that like strip of land as well, but we don't have any of that here. And so there's, I think that implementing something like that, I don't know where that fits, but.
Yeah, I was just thinking into Hone or something like that, or even in my neighborhood where I live next to the 41st and Fox station, and like you know, you got unnecessary traffic on these kind of, you know, on certain streets, and it just would make more sense to kind of funnel traffic down certain streets that are more appropriate for that. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking like to Hone or other parts in Jefferson Park that could benefit from, you know, from concepts like that.
Or implementation of one-ways too. We don't have many one-ways here at all, and that definitely slows traffic and encourages like, right? I believe one-ways, yeah.
All right, so we do have to move on to the next one because of timing, but the next one is healthy and active. So things that you would like to see when it comes to safe public spaces, promoting physical activity, access to healthy food and healthcare. And I have the examples here for you as well from, you can see this last column here, but things that cater specifically to your area.
So in the promoting the physical activity, one of the things that I've seen it at the park, the Zunai Park in Chafee, which I wish we had one in our neighborhood in Sunnyside or more of them, is where they have the wellness kind of exercise equipment. You know what I'm talking about, Emily? You've got like this whole, you know, infrastructure of workout things that are just, you know, leverage and body weight type of thing. Like, I'd love to see more of those kinds of things where like a wellness loop, you know, maybe every neighborhood should have a bit of a wellness loop where, you know, you're going from one park to another, you're doing this, you're doing that, and those parks have the infrastructure. But yeah, that park in Chafee Park has these great, you know, workout equipment that's built into the playground, in a sense. I'd love to see more of that.
People use it too.
I love it.
A lot of people using it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, why there should be one in every neighborhood?
How about you, Rebecca? Those are great. We're getting into strategy. We want to keep it more high level, but it's great stuff that you're saying.
Well, I noticed that one of the things on that is affordable, nutritious, culturally diverse foods. And two of the things we've already talked about could lend to that. The idea of community gardens and block gardens or something, so that people have a chance to to grow their own food. And then the other thing is, you know, let's see, what else did we have?
Your makerspace could serve that as well. If you think of like.
That was the other thing. Yeah, because, you know, a lot of people don't know how to garden, and they don't know how to, you know, do things that would help make their place more sustainable. And having the cultural center makerspace, not just teaching, you know, whatever, but teaching gardening and how to do, you know, composting and all of those things that make growing your own easier. Also, the bodega idea from another area was, you know, again, getting those foods in close.
Yep.
The Denver Public Library has a huge seed swap and seed library. I went to a seed swap they had in Rhino like a couple weeks ago, and they brought together, it was really awesome, a composting person, and like, so maybe utilizing the libraries for that, especially the one on, well, I guess we're on the other side of Federal, but the one that's, I forget the name of it, the one that's right at like 32nd or 33rd and Federal. But using the infrastructure that already exists, because I can't remember, do we have a library within our boundaries?
Closest one for us is Smiley, which is in Berkeley.
Right, and that's what I'm thinking.
And you guys, I think Highland has the one.
We have Woodbury across
Woodbury.
Federal.
Yep.
Right, but it's on the other side of Federal. But still, like, that's what I'm. Yeah, that's what I'm talking. Like, it's there. It's already built in. They have a ton of space in front, like aside. We don't. Correct me if I'm wrong. We have don't we have a lot of like urgent care? I lived in this neighborhood in 2013, and then I moved out for a while, and now I'm back. But there, in that time, there was like 4 urgent cares that popped up, but we don't have, like, in terms of like, and I guess on Tejon we have Highland, and there's Highlands Health and Well, or there's never mind.
Yeah, but that's not an urgent care. And I think we actually are going to need an urgent care, especially in Sunnyside, where, you know, along Inca, where hundreds and hundreds of apartments are going up. And we really need an urgent care that you can walk to. And we do not have one. I don't think we have one in the boundaries of Sunnyside at all.
No.
I could be wrong, but I want to say the closest one to me is at 38th and Irving.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I think,
where the bike shop used to be.
Yeah, Salvador or something. But yeah, so I don't think between Chaffee and Sunnyside, we do not have an urgent care. And as we think about the kinds of businesses that we need, and this goes back to the 15-minute, the walkable, right? Having the services you need within your neighborhood was what we want, where you can get to it quickly, and it's just convenient, right? So urgent care is something we do not have, and I think, you know, we don't need another yoga studio or a coffee shop, but we do need urgent care.
We need Regis to get on there.
Yeah. But, you know, we don't think about services. We're always thinking about this consumer, you know, other goods like a brewery or a restaurant, but we don't think about services sometimes. And I think services, along with that bodega, having more closer, you know, where you can walk and get your milk, eggs and bread, you know, toilet paper, you know, and toothpaste, you know, where you don't have to run to the grocery store to pick up one thing you don't have. But I think urgent care might be in that in terms of healthy and active.
Great point. Esteban?
I was just going to say the clinics. I mean, we don't have any health, like as Trudy was saying, we don't have urgent care clinics that are readily available. I guess, like, in terms of one other thing I was going to mention, in terms of culturally diverse foods or affordable and nutritious. I mean, like we've already talked about gardens. Correct me if I'm wrong, but do we have what kinds of like farmers markets or things like that do we have in the near Northwest?
I think there's one by Little Man.
No, they don't do that anymore.
Oh, they don't?
On Central, the 32nd and Lowell,
that's the biggest one.
Union Station are the 2 closest ones. We do not have one over in this area. I don't think Tennyson has one either, right?
No.
So between Tennyson, Chaffee, Sunnyside, we don't have a farmer's market. And this has actually come up multiple times. Quig Newton has mentioned this. Locavore has mentioned this. Zia that developed, as well as other things that are going up. Walshanky, other folks have mentioned the need to create that kind of a farmer's market in that area. So, it's on multiple people's mind and it's come up on conversation. So I think farmer's market, is something that we should potentially think about for.
Those are great points. We're almost out of time. I just want to get Rebecca's comment in real quick.
I'm just going to say we have had a farmer's market in Highland and it was put on by Honey and people burned out.
Yes.
So, you have to build on the human capital and people who want to be involved, because the community center and all these things are going to come because you got people who can give the time.
Yep. I say we partner with businesses and institutions, and not just a volunteer, group of people, if we could.
And this isn't close for everyone, but Regis could turn their entire parking lot on 50th and Federal into like a need to meet all of these things.
And quick, one last thing before we break off. Anyone would want to speak on this when we get called on in the bigger group? Because we're going in 10 seconds. Rebecca, volunteer?
Yep. If no one else wants to, I will do that.
Thank you.
I think maybe we're all back in the room. Kind of looks like it. So we're just kind of going to go around and kind of try to summarize the ideas we came up with. I know probably every group came up with a lot of ideas, so I am going to try to keep you to just a couple of minutes. So if you maybe noticed when you were having conversation, if there were any ideas that you were particularly passionate about or really felt like kind of were emblematic of these neighborhoods, maybe try to focus on those. And then I'm sure as we go through, there might be some overlap, so we'll share that. So we have about a little under 10 minutes to go over them. So we'll just start with the first group again. So Cheney, if you are your volunteer from your group, would like to start.
Okay, I'm gonna start. So we had kind of a conversation about how great Northwest Denver is around businesses and all that. We had Charlie in our group, who's a business owner, was really excited about that, but then also that there's kind of a diversity in the area that we're talking about of those businesses, and how like in Chaffee Park we don't have as many local businesses, and some retail opportunities that we recently have turned just to retail, mostly because of the pandemic, turned most to just to housing and no retail, no mixed use. At JD's, for instance, and at 49th and Sydney, it seems like they're just going to be housing and not mixed use, which is disappointing because the neighborhood is really excited about having some new small local businesses potentially there. So I think the vision is kind of to be able to activate. Sorry, I'm from Chaffee, so I can't. I'm just going to focus more on that, and just be able to activate different areas, like on Pecos Street. There's a big, for lease restaurant space there that's been like that for 3 or 4 years. We have the Dollar Tree up on Federal next to Aria that they left, and that's sitting there now. We'd love to just see those places activated. And we talked for a while.
Speak to some of the other issues, just because everyone's only going to get a couple minutes. So I want to make sure you get to talk about some of the other stuff. Sorry.
We talked for a while about the industrial part of Sunnyside and Chaffee, and how that actually is important to preserve as well, for providing jobs, and having that industrial zone stay that way. And let's see, Renee's going to help me out with the next two ones.
Yep, so under environmentally resilient, we talked about utilizing open space, parks that exist, opportunities with existing parks, bringing in food trucks, art, emphasis on less cars, walkability, protecting not too much lighting, as well as, there was one other idea, which streets, having streets that were dedicated to pedestrians in terms of that walkability. And then under health and activity, just finding those spaces near our highways or other places to plant trees so that we can have a healthier balance between car pollution and the quality of air. The need for a rec center and utilizing space at Zuni Park for other opportunities. It needs more bike parking. And there is that idea about streets. So not just safe routes or bikeways, but actually streets where there's access through alleys and they can be dedicated to pedestrians.
Thank you, guys. We'll move on to group 2 and try it. Yeah, just we want to give us some time to talk about our next steps at the end. So if you can't, I know there's a lot of content here, but if you can kind of just touch on the things that you guys felt you were really passionate or focused on.
So I think we spent the most time on ethnically diverse and vibrant. And one of the things that we came up with early was spaces, venues for artists, creative studio, creative space, cultural resource center. And then as we moved on, that became more and more important in terms of other things we thought could be done to really improve quality of life. Need, again, spaces for youth to go to, and that could be part of that. Rec centers can be places where the youth can hang out. Okay, yeah. Northside neighborhood once had a community center that did that. We can certainly look at that model and do it again. Environmentally resilient. Someone mentioned the food forest model in a park like Pecos and 46th, for instance, can be used as open spaces or open space schools with education opportunities, green infrastructure, including green roofs and new development, growing responsibly. We mentioned the idea of super blocks like in Barcelona, and just more space for people to be outside and gather, and maybe funneling traffic to specific streets. So maybe one-ways, that was one thing we mentioned. And then finally down here under healthy and active, having outside wellness exercise equipment in the parks. Perhaps Zuni Park was one of the things we talked about. Affordable, nutritious, culturally diverse foods, more community gardens, farm markets. We could use the maker spaces as well as for arts and culture to teach people nutrition, canning, gardening, all sorts of things. One way of having more diverse and nutritious food is that concept another group came up with, or that was earlier, the bodegas, having little local markets that have good quality food. Utilizing Denver Public Library resources. And we need, this got very strong response, more clinics and urgent care centers, so they're walkable.
Great, thank you so much for covering all that. All right, at group 3.
I'll defer to the stakeholder members, Tim or Lorenzo.
Okay, so we had talked about the Navajo Arts District, which was starting to really develop, but then it kind of went a different direction. It's still there, but maybe building on that, expand the Navajo Arts District, and hopefully attract various artists which was happening at one point, and trying to bring that back. Also bring back some of the diversity of the businesses throughout the neighborhoods, make sure we support small business opportunities and that our community supported, and also keeping in mind the youth and the services that they do provide. Embedded community nodes and destinations in Chaffee Park. And we had talked a little bit about that. Community serving businesses and community gathering spaces. We have some very old and wonderful theaters. So the Holiday was mentioned. Amanda mentioned the Holiday, the Book Theater. I don't know if it's still there. It's not very far from where I live, but that's another space that community could utilize and can enjoy in both historic areas or locations. And we also talked about celebrating alternative energy, and whether it be solar or whatever alternative energy we can kind of incorporate into the neighborhood, and if it would fit the needs of the community, would be a wonderful example for other communities by providing leadership in environmental stewardship. So that we talked quite a bit about that, and really being a wonderful role model. And healthy and active category, we talked about community partnerships with service providers and institutions. And I had mentioned, and they put my name down to hold me to what I talked about, but I also do community public health through the Anschutz Medical Center. We've been doing we've been partnering with Northwest Denver and the neighborhoods for over 10 years now. So we have built wonderful inroads through community engagement. We have earned the trust of our community leaders and organizations over the years, and we should build on that because not only do they have influence and have been supportive of our communities, but there's also funding available through some of the efforts and some of the projects that they would like to do, and partnering with communities. So really enhancing those relationships and keeping them healthy, and also acknowledging them. I think a lot of people don't know a lot of the work we've done over the years, and that's kind of my task, to document that history and share it with the group. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you for sharing. And then our final group 4, if you could share kind of a brief summary of what you guys came up with.
You bet. We'll be brief. We'll be brief in the interest of time, no problem. So we were on fire in our group. There were some serious fireworks, and I'm just going to focus on sort of a pillar for each one of these topics. With economics, we talked a lot about having access to capital, and we quickly switched gears and started talking a lot about education, because we haven't talked a lot about education, it doesn't seem like, up until this point. Vocational education, retraining, community college, and just making sure that everyone in our neighborhoods has the basic skills to provide what they need to provide for themselves and their families. So it all boils down to wealth building, and that's sort of the pillar for that category. Moving on to the environment, we talk a lot about sustainability, but we went beyond that and talked about the concept of climate adaptation, because Denver is without a doubt becoming a warmer city, and we must adapt for that. We can't just simply preserve resources for the future. We have to adapt to our growing urban heat island, to impenetrable surfaces that we have all across the city and in Northwest Denver, and expanding our tree canopy. We brought up the example of the old La Loma restaurant. For anyone who hasn't been over here in Jefferson Park lately, all those trees that used to surround that restaurant were just taken down last week. And then when it comes to healthy and active, we of course talked about grocery stores, as other groups have talked about. Farmers market, we talked about what may be happening over the National Western, and whether that would be too far or to create accessibility issues if a public market were eventually to be put over there. We do have, of course, farmers markets around the neighborhood, but they don't happen on a reliable basis. Connecting children to families and nature. Brad's doing a great job of just giving me a teleprompter here, so I appreciate it. So in the interest of time, I think I'll wrap it there.
Thank you so much. Sorry, we ran a little late, but I think, are we going back to Liz then for kind of next
Sure,
step?
and we can send out this document to folks too, so everybody can have that as a reference point. But thank you for that great discussion. And where we're heading, like we've mentioned a couple times, is to try to kind of bring all these ideas and look at what we're getting from public input into draft vision statements that we'll bring back to all of you to look at. And that is what we're aiming for. And according to the doodle poll, not everybody filled it out, but it looks like November 10th is the best fit. So that's only a couple of weeks away, if I'm doing my math correctly, that we'll shoot for our next meeting. So we'll go ahead and send out an appointment for that. Hopefully most folks can make it. We can figure out other ways for you to provide input if you're not able to, but hopefully that works for most people. And we're also going to share some of what we're seeing in terms of looking at data points and what we've heard and highlighting some issues and opportunities, because that's sort of, you know, we have this vision statement, but what are the actual issues that are kind of coming out of some of those things that Cheney shared on ideas or likes and dislikes from folks, and what our, you know, data points are sharing as well. So we'll give you a summary of that as well. And we're not planning for
December. It's too late to add something.
No, go ahead. Sure.
So where we talk about our community gardens, a lot of our schools have community gardens and they have kitchens, and most of them are open during the summer for meal programs. It's an excellent opportunity for some community partnerships around how to preserve that food and, you know, work with even folks who run some of the other local community gardens that are not on school properties. So I just want to throw that out as an interface with DPS.
Oh, that's a great suggestion. We'll make sure we capture that in our notes as we go forward. So I appreciate that. Just to finish up there, so we're not planning for a December meeting, but we do, and we'll share some additional info at the November meeting. But if you're having an event, or you want to host some type of conversation with folks that you know in the neighborhood, we're happy to attend or give you materials if you want to share information about the plan, because we are anticipating kind of our next kind of big push of engagement will probably come like in the new year. So if anything's going on, feel free to reach out to us and we can help support you.
Hey Liz, can I ask Shruti? Yep. And if, I don't know, can you quit screen sharing so we could all see each other?
Yep, can you? Who's sharing now? Is that changing?
Amanda, can you pick me up?
There we go.
Awesome. If they're still on, can we ask the people who are having things this coming weekend, talk about them? Like, can I have Nita? So I'll call people who I know who are having things. Can I call Nita out? Can I call Shruti out? And Liz was
Rebecca
on here. Rebecca, maybe do you know what's going on with Highland? Can you all just share those things? And then anybody who knows what you're doing for Christmas. So can we just end with community sharing?
Sure, great idea.
So go ahead.
Okay, I'll jump in. So we'll be holding the annual Dia de los Muertos ceremony. Let me be real clear. This is the oldest Dia de los Muertos. We started this in the 1986 in Northwest Denver at La Raza Park with Servicio de la Raza and Escuela Tlatelolco. And this came out of young people who were complaining they didn't know their traditions and wanted to know why we didn't do it. And we said, okay, they challenged us and we created, we went to Grupo Tlaloc and they began in 2000. Their group started and they began to do Dia de los Muertos. No, it's not a drinking fest. It is not an alcoholic drink. It is not going to a bar. It is a ceremony with ofrendas made by people in the community and blessed by Grupo with danza. And that is a ceremony that is over thousands of years, that doesn't come from Spain or anyone, comes from the Aztecas, from Mexico. And it's been celebrated every year since then. So it is an indigenous ceremony, and we have marigolds. This is Daisies is donating all kinds of marigolds for us, and we do flowers and candles. And Grupo Azteca will be Grupo Tlaloc will be doing the blessings of all of the ofrendas. We'll be at the park. We'll start at 4 o'clock at the Troy Chavez Peace Garden and do the procession to La Raza Park where the ofrendas, and we'll do the rest of the night there in ceremony. You're all welcome. It's November 1st from 4 to 8. We always host it on the day. We don't make adjustments for holidays and work schedules.
I have the graphic, and Naomi can, since I'm the one-hand wonder, can you help me remember to send that out to the steering group? Thanks. So for those of you who don't know, I broke my hand 4 weeks ago in a car accident, and I had hand surgery 2 weeks ago. So literally I'm sitting here cleaning my surgery site. So I'm the one-hand goddess. So if I don't email you back right away, text me so I can do voice dictation. Okay, so then Trupti, you have a lot going on in Sunnyside.
Yeah, so we've got a full day of Halloween programming. It's all free. So tell everyone, and I'll send the link to Liz. I also put it into chat. We've got 10 a.m. free pumpkin decorating at Cherry Bean. At noon, we've got a pet adoption behind a Cherry Bean, sponsored by Lily's, as well as Mojave and Tejon and Big Bones. At 2 p.m., we've got a pet costume parade. So there'll be prizes. We had like 60 dogs show up last year. It was awesome. And then at 4 p.m., we have a kids and adults costume contest at Monkey Barrel. And at 5:30, we have a trunk or treat at Denver Bookbinding, as well as a 3D storytelling show over there. So if anybody wants to sponsor a trunk, and there's also a trunk decorating contest, there's free cotton candy. So we've got a full day of stuff going on. Come to any of it or all of it. Tell your friends, and thank you.
And that's on Saturday, correct?
Oh, sorry,
that's on Saturday.
Yeah. October 30th. Sorry. Yep.
And then Rebecca.
Yep. Sunday at 9:30, Honey is doing the annual Halloween Kids Parade. This year, starting at the Gardens at St. Elizabeth, marching down 32nd to Erie Street, and then all day on Erie Street there will be booths and activities, and Brad and I have a booth for Near Northwest that we're going to do interactive activities on, asking people what would make their perfect neighborhood to carry back to this group. And so it'll be one of many, many fun things happening down on Erie Street.
And then for those of you who have kiddos, Aslan Rec Center is hosting a festivity this Friday at 5 p.m. in coordination with our Denver Police Department. So that's at Aslan Rec Center. And then it's not in Northwest Denver, but this Friday, Skinner starts a procession at Skinner about 6:45, and we walk through the Harkness Heights neighborhood with candles and a procession, and we do an ofrenda at Skinner this Friday. So those are the activities that I've co-sponsored along with the Dia de los Muertos on Monday, November 1st. And unfortunately, I'll be at City Council, so I can't be there, but I will be there in spirit. Maybe I can go early and set something up. So other than that, thank you all. And if you all start planning holiday events, I know COVID is real. I ended up having COVID because I went to the emergency room for a broken wrist. And then exactly 5 days later, I got COVID for spending 8 hours in the emergency room. So I know COVID is real. And my daughter got it because she was helping me, the one-hand wonder, take care of my family. So then she got it. So I do understand that COVID's real and I'm vaccinated. But if we do decide to meet even smaller groups, it would be a great opportunity. I'd love all of you to inflection and getting together during the holidays is really important. So thank you all.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to send their, I think I saw the email come through, any of the information on these events, I'm happy to compile it and send it out to the group so that everyone has it.
And Ashton, if you want to tell us the day that Jefferson Park has a holiday party, that'd be great. So we can all put it on our calendar. My city council page should be able to host these as well. So if you send Liz the information, we'll figure out how to connect them to my calendar. Well, thank you all. And in a time of Thanksgiving, being thankful in the harvest, have a good evening and enjoy the leaves and enjoy the happy Halloween and the Dia de los Muertos celebrations.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you all. Thanks for staying over a bit.